This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Pruitt.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast with Kevin Pruitt, and today we have a very special guest. He heads up the M&A practice at Punctuation.com and has worked on dozens of deals both inside and outside the industry, which allows him to bring a unique perspective as a fellow owner who has gone through the process himself. Punctuation is a small advisory practice working exclusively with small to mid-sized independent marketing services firms. It's designed to help them with positioning, lead generation, benchmarking, valuation, and succession planning. He graduated from Emory University's Business School in 2005 and began working at a small boutique marketing strategy consultancy. There he was able to do marketing strategy and positioning work for many well-known Fortune 500 CPG companies. 2011, he started a craft brewery, Monday Night Brewing. I'm wondering, is there a football connection there? Obviously, with the whole Monday night, I can hear Bo Cephas singing in the background. Where his focus was on marketing, sales, and tap rooms. After helping his business partners grow to 180 plus employees in numerous locations, he stepped away from the day-to-day to head up the M&A practice for Punctuation. He is also the joint owner of a dog with possibly the most unique name ever, Mr. Oscar Snuggs. Please join me in welcoming Jonathan Baker to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast. Jonathan, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been good to just chat offline. This is our second attempt today to record the interview because I actually had to drive somewhere that had high-speed internet in Arkansas. But man, it's good to connect with you today. That's quick background, but round it out a little bit. Is there anything we didn't mention that might give our audience a little better picture of Jonathan Baker?
I mean, you told me more about myself than I know. So
Love it.
I live in Atlanta. The other half of Punctuation is my father, who lives right outside of Nashville. And yeah, it's been a fun journey.
So let's talk about that journey because it has been quite a journey, but you didn't wake up thinking, you know what, I want to work in mergers and acquisitions. So it's like, so many of our pathways were born out of like scratching our own itch, so to speak. I mean, you stepped into this because you had gone through that journey yourself.
Yeah, that's right. And I didn't go to college thinking I want to be an M&A guy. I think going into the M&A process as a seller, I had some preconceived notions that, it was pretty straightforward. Yes, there's negotiation, but everyone's kind of trying to agree on a spreadsheet and then we're all good. But it was so much more emotional than that. There was, the personalities involved really mattered and made big differences. And I think I wish I could have done it differently just from my own kind of mental perspective. And so I think that is what got me really interested in it.
I was looking at the website earlier today, and under the About section, it kind of has a bio for your father and a bio for you. And man, it's like National Geographic wrote the bio. It is such an interesting journey that actually you both have taken. But I mean, your father, time in Guatemala to, publishing houses to, what he's doing today. It's like, it's one of those things that I can't hold down a job, So,
Yeah, he gets bored easily, right?
Exactly. So it's never easy working with family. So what have been one or two things that as you guys have come together, I know that you've mentioned on other podcasts, you do have a high degree of respect, obviously, for not only your father, but his journey and, how he has kind of framed this. But what's the secret to being able to work with family?
Oh, man. In my case, I think it's a healthy respect. And we also have similar personalities. We both don't like work for the sake of work, but we're both also happy to work like whenever it needs done. I think honest communication is really one of the biggest things. So just making sure you're having those check-ins, and we've agreed that if things ever get kind of weird, right, like our relationship should be more important than any
Mm.
business arrangement, and so we'll back out if we need to.
Yeah, that sounds like wisdom speaking there for sure. But looking on the website, there's the tagline says that you help, digital and creative firms with positioning, reinventing, and selling. So let's talk about each of those three focus areas. I mean, positioning and selling seem, pretty par for the course, just exactly what it says. But let's talk a maybe a little deeper about reinventing. So give
Yeah.
me a scenario where because that seems like such a unique approach to this.
Um, so oftentimes something like positioning is a part of the reinvention. So it's, kind of one of the tools in the toolbox. But, I think there are many owners of firms who didn't necessarily get into this trying to run a 30-person firm. They got into it because they,
Mhm.
loved the work, or they loved the people, they loved the clients. And you can get to a point in your business, I think, particularly in America, where there's this like fixation on growth. You can get to a point where you feel trapped by your own business, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, great. Now I have payroll I have to meet every month, and it's just going to go up, and, so I have to keep selling. I think what we are really trying to do is help founders build the businesses that they meant to build to serve themselves, right? You started a business for a purpose. If you didn't want to do it, you could have just worked for someone else.
Yep.
So let's figure out how to make it serve you.
And that's so when you're looking at, I mean, I'm thinking creative services firms, digital firms, they have such a unique I guess, value proposition, for lack of a better term, because of the creatives that work in those firms, and making sure that they're going to stay with the business, because that, in many ways, that is kind of maybe the primary asset of the actual business itself is just the personnel that work there and their abilities to create. But is that more difficult to arrive at valuations, or is it more difficult on the negotiation or let's say the diligence side because you don't know that those human assets are going to stay in place?
I think in some ways it's actually easier. It's a simpler business. And so you don't have hard assets, right? You really only
Hmm.
have to worry about these softer assets. What gets challenging is not in the valuation process, but it's in the deal structure
Yeah.
process.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
how do you mitigate the risk for the buyer, but give enough kind of upside potential for the seller to be able to make this work? Because you're right, so much of it is in relationships or
Hmm.
in talent, and these are kind of ethereal terms, right?
Right.
That are hard to quantify. So it's really around like putting the right guardrails around the deal structure.
When you're working with, I mean, and I'm just kind of piggybacking on what you'd said earlier about, helping somebody, grow their business to the point that they could exit. But what are some of the things that if I'm say a marketing agency owner, and I started this because I was good at the creative arts, was a freelancer, then I started getting, regular clients, and it kind of grew. I needed to hire somebody. The business kind of grew out of my own, say, talent. And then, so now it's this snowball that's rolling downhill, gaining momentum, and I don't even know how to stop it. So, what do you come in and say to me that says, yeah, my payroll is going up every month. I have to continue to onboard clients. It seems like this assembly line that I can't turn off, so to speak. What are some of the first things that you would say to me as an agency owner that says, hey, these are things we need to kind of start putting in place so you can kind of get off this hamster
I
wheel?
mean, I think the biggest thing is first just understanding what your building towards? Like you're clearly building, but to what end? Do you want to be doing this for 10 more years, 15 more years, 0 more years?
Hmm.
And you can work backwards from there. But I think one of the things that we see is these kind of inflection points in the lifestyle or the life cycle of a company. So, you can run it pretty much any way you want if you have 10 or fewer people.
Hmm.
Above that, then you have to start putting a little bit more process in place.
Yeah.
And then when you get to 25 people, that's when you have to put even more process in place. You have to worry more about culture because you can't be the main kind of
Hmm.
dissemination of culture. And then you get to 50 and you have a whole other set of problems. And so, figuring out first, like where your skill set is and where your desires are, what size should you be? And then we can kind of reverse engineer to that. And you can be insanely profitable at a small size and at a large size,
Hmm.
right? Just because you're
Yeah.
bigger doesn't mean you're more profitable.
Right.
And you really should be chasing profit more than you should be chasing revenue.
Is there a unique way to value creative firms? Is there, because like tech firms, it seems like this is what the X times the, EBITDA or whatever it is that you're using as the standard. So, what is kind of, is there an industry standard when you're looking at creative firms?
There, uh, so yes, we use kind of EBITDA multiples, and look at adjusted EBITDA. The differences are in some of the adjustments to EBITDA. So one of the things we look really closely at is the owner paying themselves a market rate. If I had to come
Mm,
and replace them, what would I have to pay someone to do that job? And so you kind of normalize their salary, right?
right.
And if they're, maybe they own a building and they're renting it back to themselves, normalize that as well.
Hmm.
Are they running personal expenses through the business? So there's some adjustment type stuff. And then on the risk side, we're taking a really hard look at their the makeup of their clients, like their client portfolio. And, is there any aspect of it that's recurring, right? Like how stable does this revenue feel? Or do you have a single gorilla that you're kind of building on top
Yeah.
of? And if so, are you factoring that into your your plans and, able to scale back if you need to?
Yeah. Do you have all your proverbial eggs in one basket? If that one client decides to take a flyer and walk away, or is you suddenly worth zero tomorrow for it that. And
Yeah,
does it
exactly.
depend on if the owner is working in the business or not? That you're factoring their salary back in, or that's just kind of across the board.
It does depend. So we'll, if they're only working half time in the business, we'll only account for half a
Right.
salary.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That I as an agency owner or creative service productized services firm, the I think that it would be easy for me to fall in love with quote the baby of my business. I kind of birthed this and how like when you're talking to them about valuations, how often does the emotional, birth factor come into play when you're trying to say, hey, I'm trying to lead you to the point that I think this will sell, and they're like, but it's worth three times that, because
Yeah.
it's personal now. How do you
Yeah.
kind of divorce them from that, evaluating emotive evaluation?
Clients come to us at different points in their journey where they've kind of reckoned with that. But I think at some point, everyone deals with that to some degree. Some have more ego about it than others. But, once you see a number in front of you, that really forces the issue, right? So you're going to have the conversation once you have a valuation because now you see what someone would pay for you. And we are building our valuations to show you what the market generally is going to
Hmm.
value your firm at. That's not to say there isn't someone out there that would buy you for three times as
Sure.
much. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, But th that kind of buyer is going to find you. You're not going to find them.
Yeah.
And if they haven't found you, then it's likely that either they don't exist, or it's not the right time. So we try to, give some tough love to our clients. I think that's one of the reasons why we get our fees paid all up front.
Yeah, you can. That's right. We're not friends anymore, so I'm not going to pay that invoice. But yeah, I'm glad that the money has come early. So on the sell side, so are there is it a unique subset of buyers that are looking for these types of firms, or are these an attractive, for just general like PE firms that are out there with, with some money to invest type thing, or are they looking more for the, brick and mortar stuff, on the more easier to evaluate or whatever side of things? So when you're looking at selling, who are you attracting?
Yeah, I mean, it's really across the board. We do have private equity, and these days there's actually private equity kind of specifically going after professional services firms, agencies, usually on the smaller side. Um, then we have other firms, other strategics who are trying to build something, maybe a roll-up strategy or something like that. Then you might have holding company buyers.
Hmm.
You have individual buyers who want to run something but don't want to build it.
Hmm.
Maybe they just exited an agency and want a new challenge.
Yeah.
So they're looking for something to buy. We have even family offices who are looking for long-term holds of, culture first organizations.
Hmm.
Um, so it can really vary.
Are there agencies out there that are kind of trying to like grow through acquisition versus grow through just kind of organic growth? Are they looking to just buy smaller firms to consolidate, in a much larger family?
There are plenty of firms trying to do that. And the pros are pretty obvious because the bigger your EBITDA, the higher the multiple on that EBITDA you get. And so there's this like multiplicative effect.
Hmm.
The larger you are, as long as you're profitable. So yes, that happens a lot.
And I mean, there are obviously economies of scale when you're talking about, acquiring, where you can have one tech department, one HR department, one accounting department, one, that's serving all these
In theory,
individuals.
yes.
In theory, yes, exactly. Yes, assuming that there was some continuity before, or some,
Yeah.
I guess, crossover before. What are some lessons that you could look back, really since you started, in dealing with these firms? What are some key foundational principles that you would share with somebody that is, they're maybe they're looking 5 years down the road. They're hey, I want to do this for another 5 years or so. What are some pieces that it would be good for them to start putting into place now?
Keep your books clean.
Hmm.
I know there are usually some tax advantages to running certain things through the business, but if selling is the goal, the simpler those books are, the easier it is going to be to sell, and the more kind of negotiating power you have, not spending trying to convince them that your Amazon Prime subscription is personal. Um, so keep clean books, switch to accrual-based accounting.
Mm.
You're gonna have to do that at some point before you sell, regardless. So you may as well get the benefits of it now. Um, Pay yourself what you're worth
Through the business.
through the
Yep.
business, right? And the benefit of that, obviously, one is you're setting a precedent that, okay, in any earn-out scenario, this is what I'm worth, and so this is what you're gonna have to pay me. But two, it also forces you into making maybe some tougher decisions that you should have made earlier. Um, and three, if the business is not providing you with what you deserve, or what you're earning, then you're going to lose interest yourself.
Mm.
So, just get ahead of that. I think also consider a niche, position yourself The narrower you go, generally, the higher the multiple you can get. But, it's going to be with a smaller pool of buyers. But positioning has other benefits. It helps you really hone in on a marketing plan, for example.
I yeah, I really resonate with the idea kind of niching down because, you're right. I mean, I think it does kind of narrow the field of, who you're, it also narrows your competition down too. So you're a lot more, I mean, everything is scaled, to a point that it is more focused and more, you're much more of an expert probably in one particular area that you can even set pricing differently, on in that particular area for sure. But if you are, I guess it would be better that you want to prepare for this as much in advance as you can instead of this emergency sell. But let's say that you're at a point where you see that maybe the market drying up a little bit where you are, maybe your client base is kind of aging or, you know, cycling out or whatever. What are some ways to maybe mitigate that so that the valuation just doesn't crash on you all of a sudden?
Um, if you're seeing that stuff, you need to start thinking about selling kind of immediately. Because you might not be able to find the exact right fit buyer the first time around. It might take a few rounds.
Hmm.
Um, but in general, the things that you would do to build a sustainable business are the same things that would make your business more sellable. So don't necessarily think about it through the lens of what do I do to get this business in a place where I can sell it. Think about it through the lens of what can I do to build this business to something that's going to be around in a few years.
Yeah, yeah. And it's more attractive to a buyer.
Yeah.
Just the business itself. So I'm assuming that it's pretty easy to tell if, maybe just based on the books alone, it might be easy to tell is a firm on the way up or is it on the way down? And, how do you, um, if you're on the seller side, are there ways that you can kind of, um, I hate to use the word explain, but as a buyer, would the market factors, is that an understandable reason that you may be seeing a downward, trend, or you're in the process of transitioning the market you're in or whatever? I mean, are those sometimes, I guess, acceptable excuses for seeing, a kind of a
Yeah,
downward
yeah.
trend?
They certainly are. I think honesty is almost always the best policy
Yes,
here.
for sure. Yeah.
And so, what is the story behind it? And let's dig in, right?
Hmm.
Um, the reality too is that not all buyers are buying you because of your growth curve. They might be looking much harder at the seniority of your staff
Yeah.
or the makeup of your clients. So, you don't have to focus 100% on making sure that your revenues are steadily going up,
Hmm.
because there are plenty of different types of buyers out there.
What, on average, how long does it take from the time somebody first gets in contact with you till the time that you're probably signing that sales contract and exit, allowing them to exit? Is there an average length of time that generally happen?
I'd say traditionally it's been 9 to 12 months, but recently it's actually been shorter. 6 to 7 months is what we've been seeing.
Is that because your processes are better and you can position it quicker, or is it because like there's just a lot of money in the market that is looking for a place to land?
Well, I'd like to think part of it's us, but there are a lot of buyers out there and there aren't a ton of sellers. And so for every deal that, we bring to the table, we've got a lot more interest than we might otherwise have.
And are you seeing that cause prices to go up as well? I mean, the
No, we're
the
not.
X valuation.
No, we're not. They're not going down though. Um, they're fair. They're fair. The kind of heyday of 2021 multiples is behind us. I don't know if we're gonna see that again, but um, multiples right now seem fair from kind of my perspective.
Well, it's I think that man, I've tried to ask questions from about in every direction in the equation here that say a marketing services firm may be looking at as they're engaging with you, and we kind of touched on the tagline of the company and how you are positioning, reinventing, and selling creative or digital asset firms. But the idea that um, it's just amazing to see how you guys have, um, you know, walked these firms through this process in 6 to 7 months, which to me seems remarkably quick, to start the process, get the books in order, do due diligence, find the buyer, allow them to actually do their diligence in that process too, and then the checks are being written. So
Right.
that to me is amazing. But is there anything that we haven't touched on? Keep in mind that we primarily are talking to kind of marketing agencies out there, but is there anything else that you would add that we have not asked about?
One thing I would add is the valuation as a planning tool. So when you're, building a budget, right, for the next year, that's a great planning tool. But think about the valuation as kind of a long-term planning tool. And for most of these owners, the equity in your business is going to be the single greatest kind of asset that you have. If you think about your net worth,
Hmm.
most of it's going to be tied up in this business, right? And so it just makes sense to have a general idea of what it's worth and to be tracking that over time. And it's not prohibitively expensive. We will do a valuation for 5,000, and then if we do them annually, we'll do them for 2,500 after that every year. There are plenty of other firms that do valuations as well, but I would just challenge people to think about going through the process, uh, not only because it helps kind of crystallize your own thinking about succession planning, but also because it is a great planning tool in and of itself.
I am so glad that I gave you that opportunity to kind of wrap us up before we jumped into our speed round, our rapid fire round. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Uh, and if you've looked at our other previous interviews, we have right near the end of our chat, we have some disparate questions that you're going to think, what in the world are they going to add? These are crazy questions, but there's method to our madness here. So just first response, just really quick rapid fire answers. So I'm going to ask you, did you get along with your parents growing up?
Yes, generally.
That is the standard answer, I think. Do you have siblings?
Yes.
We've established you have a pet. At least
Yep.
one. Okay.
Yep.
Children,
Yes.
on a business day, what day or what time do you normally wake up in the morning?
6:45,
And what time do you go to bed?
9:30.
Ideal vacation spot, money not an object, anywhere in the world.
Yellowstone in the winter or Greece anytime.
Hmm. The White Island, the islands with the white buildings, or
Yeah.
yeah. How does faith affect the way you do business?
Man, it used to affect it a lot more than it does now. I'm still trying to work through that myself.
Our closing question. If you were king for a day in the marketing space in the world, what is one change you would make about marketing?
Oh my gosh. There's still a lot of snake oil out there. And I would do my best to eliminate that. Marketing is a really noble trade, but because of the snake oil, you just get some bad actors and you get some bad reputation. And I think I'd try to fight for, all the good that marketing can do.
I love that answer. Do you know how often some variation of that answer is are people's answers is like authenticity, it's like truthfulness, it's like, let's quit the spam. There's always some variation around that. But Jonathan, it has been a pleasure to chat with you today. Thanks for taking time in your busy schedule to share with our audience, kind of share your expertise and really just help our agency owners grow and scale their business. Jonathan, have a great week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.